Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Samantha and today we're going to be talking about books, like we do every day. But more specifically, we're going to be talking about anti-war novels. So this is kind of me giving you guys a very specific book recommendation. It kind of rooted from the fact that every time I edited my videos, I saw these books in the background and I needed some sort of excuse to talk about them, and I don't see myself having any form of excuse to talk about them in the future, so I'm making myself an excuse to talk about these with you because I feel like if I were to recommend any sort of like classic war novel, these would be them. It's also kind of a subgenre of book that I really enjoy for some reason, anti-war novels. I don't know where that came from. I really think it's just because of the really frank discussion of humanity that occurs in all of these books. It brings out, war, of course, brings out the worst and the best in people, and I love that in a literary format. Obviously, like, these are some of my favorites, so I'm going to tell you about some of these books. And also I have a couple of books that I have not read yet that are on my bookshelf that I'm looking forward to. So if you have read any of those books, you'll have to tell me down in the comments below. If there's any books that you would recommend as far as like anti-war novel, go ahead and put them down below so that I can get my hands on them and other people can. I think that honestly categorizing books as anti-war novels is interesting, mostly because I don't know of any pro-war books. I think that even if you like had like a pro-war book, it would still be an anti-war book just because it's war. But that's just me. This is what these are technically categorized as far as the genre goes. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. The first book that I'm going to discuss is All Quiet on the Western Front. I do not know how to pronounce this name. I don't even think Google knows how to pronounce this name, so there's that. I will put it down somewhere up here so you can actually read it. But this is a book about World War I. It is about a group of boys who enlist in the German army and kind of their survival story through World War I. Honestly, this one, this is definitely more of like a reflection on the horrors of war, and on top of that, this is about a discussion on humanity. Like, this is a discussion of humanity and friendship and the loss of friends and the gaining of friends and brotherhood and survival at its basest core. And it will hurt you. I'm just going to give you fair warning. Paul, who is the main character, and his friends obviously enlist in the army at the very beginning of World War I. It's like a form of bravado. They are excited, they're happy, they're young men. And you really see like the breakdown of their characters and their humanity as they go through this story. It's not only about the brotherhood of the German soldiers with each other, but also just like the brotherhood of humanity and humans in general. There's definitely a scene in here that is a great reflection of that, is a great example of that, and that is when Paul faces down a British soldier in the trenches. And there's nothing, if nothing else, I need you to like find this book and look up that section because it will break your heart. Another very like, these books are very much like seared into my brain, so I can in fact tell you several scenes from them. There's a scene where Paul ends up in a French whorehouse. I don't even know the YouTube correct way to say that, but in like a French whorehouse, and it's like this reflection on these men and just wanting love and wanting to see like the good in humanity, because it wasn't even about having sex with these sex workers. It was more about feeling safe and like with somebody and with another human, and almost like this motherly affection that these men are missing halfway through this war. And it was just those two scenes, like I said, if nothing else, like get this book and read those two scenes and just like reflect on humanity, because like it hurts so much. If you don't want to read the book, Netflix also has a really good adaptation of this book. I believe it is a foreign film from Germany. It has won several awards. I had my husband watch it and it is amazing. It is amazing. But All Quiet on the Western Front, highly recommend. The next one I will recommend is Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. Before I talk about this book, I do want to give you a heads up that this is a complete, like, this won't put you in a good mindset. All right, like, not saying that any of these books will put you in a good mindset, but this one is definitely more of almost a psychological thriller. Maybe not a thriller, maybe that's like, is there a other genre for like contemporary psychological like I don't know. But this is about a soldier in World War II. He is bombed. He gets shrapnel. He wakes up in a hospital without the ability to move any of his limbs or use any of his five senses. So he can't talk, he can't hear, he can't see. He's literally just his mind inside of his body. Like, that's all you have. So you get his perspective in that body. And like he kind of senses what's going on around him. You kind of get like his before the war, during the war, and then now in the hospital. And honestly, it's not just like, it's not just an anti-war novel. I don't think any of these ones could be characterized as just an anti-war novel because of the fact that they really do shed light on humanity. But this one definitely does. It gives you, it's a full perspective on the human brain and the human psyche and how you survive, but how do you survive? I think this is like one big metaphor of like PTSD in soldiers. Like, you survive, but do you really survive? Like, how do you go on living your life? Are you living life? It's, like I said, it'll hurt your heart, but not only will it hurt your heart, but it'll hurt your psyche. So be careful going into this one. However, I do highly recommend it as an anti-war novel. It'd be a great one for people to start recommending people read in college, if you get my gist. The next one I actually read in high school. This is Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. This is a book literally about soldiers in the Vietnam War and what they carried. So we're not going too far off from the title. This is a collection of short stories that kind of end up integrating into each other. They parallel each other. They eventually have like, I forget, it's like short stories, but they all have like different aspects that kind of link up together. This one will make you sob. It reads almost like a fever dream. It's very lyrical, very quotable. It's beautiful, it's poignant, it is also short. I would recommend this for anyone who needs to write a book report on Vietnam War, if I have any high schoolers out there. But this is great. I hate saying that it's great because they are anti-war novels, but like the perspectives that you get, I like the short story format of this book. I have never ever heard of a person who has read this book and said it was bad. Anyone that I have known that has read this book has given it 5 stars, and I definitely feel like there is a reason for that. Yeah. A profound study of men at war that illuminates the capacity and the limits of the human heart and soul. Actually, that's a fairly good line. So, The Things They Carried. Next, these last two are nonfiction. This one is Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell. This one is Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell. This is about soldiers or SEAL Team 6 specifically, in the Middle East. I forget what country they are in. Exactly, Afghanistan. So they're in Afghanistan. This is from one of the perspectives of one of those team members from SEAL Team 6. He was like the lone survivor of a mission. A mission that they went on. This one is definitely more of a discussion on modern warfare. So if you go through and you read these books, you get all the war crimes, all the crimes against humanity, and then you can switch up into something that is more modern warfare and a discussion on modern warfare. And it's very intriguing and enlightening how we've moved as humanity and society in the way that we perform war. This is really just unbelievable, jaw-dropping. Like, it's just one of those kind of stories. It's very reminiscent of Black Hawk Down. So if you've seen that movie or read that book, this is definitely a good companion to go with that, because of the story in itself and what occurs in it. So, yeah. Operation Red Wing. I forget that's what it was called. But I recommend this one as well. The next, last but not least, that's for sure. This one I have a hard time even discussing. But that one is The White Donkey by Maximilian Murat. The harder one to talk about. This is definitely like him coming into the Marines, learning the Marine lifestyle, because if you don't know, Marines definitely have a specific lifestyle just for themselves. If you want to know more about that, you'll have to pick up Terminal Lance, which is the same author, but this comic strip about Marine life. His deployment in 2007 with his team, I'm getting off topic, they are in Afghanistan. It discusses like the missions that they were on, the patrols that they were on. The gist of it is that like they didn't see any combat until the very end, and during that combat, he loses one of his team members. Now, this whole book coalesces in one single sentence. And this one single sentence changes your perspective on everything else that happens in this book. And it hurts. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. I really want people to read this. So I really want you to get that same experience that I did going into this book. And yeah, it's just a discussion on PTSD, what happens after, what happens after you come home, the struggles that these soldiers go through, losing their brothers, not only their brothers, but coming out of the Marines and losing that lifestyle that they had grown so accustomed to, and in some weird sort of way loved as well. But yeah, this one is hard to talk about just because it is that one sentence. One sentence changes the entire perspective of the entire book and wrecks your world. So go in this one. I don't want to talk too much about it, but go into this one with that idea and know that. Because I was reading through it and I was just like, okay, so this is just like a normal book, whatever. It's not that fascinating. He has some allusions to like this white donkey as he's patrolling. He keeps on saying like this weird white donkey. You kind of learn like the lore behind that. And then one sentence at the very end and I was sobbing. So let's get on to books that I'm looking forward to reading that I know aren't necessarily anti-war. Because I haven't read them, I can't tell you if they're anti-war or not, but do have the discussions of war and what happens after war and men during war. Can I say war one more time? Okay, the first one is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. This one I'm a little iffy about, but because this is technically like a 500-page book about a man in the Spanish Civil War in 1937 who's tasked with blowing up a bridge. Like that's the entire book. Like he's working on trying to blow up this bridge. Apparently there is a very talked about scene in this book where the main male character ends up having a love interest, but also like is laying down on a pine needle bed. I don't know. If you've read this book, tell me if this is worth the read. I'm probably gonna read it anyways, but this is definitely one that is on my radar as far as like as a war novel. Next one, which I'm a little bit more excited about, is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. This is kind of his book that I feel like everyone knows as far as Ernest Hemingway. This is about an ambulance driver in World War I. He falls in love with a nurse, and it is semi-autobiographical, so I think that's where a lot of people will find intrigue in this, is that Ernest Hemingway himself was a journalist, I believe in World War I. And this is, like I said, it's semi-autobiographical, so that's interesting. There's also alternate endings, so I've watched and heard about some people reading this book and the ending just really like destroying you. So apparently Ernest Hemingway went back and rewrote some of these endings. So that's interesting. I'm intrigued. I'm ready to read this one. The last but not least, Ernest Hemingway. The Sun Also Rises. Now this one is post World War I. This is about an American soldier and a British journalist, a male and a female. And they end up in Paris after the war. It's kind of like a celebration of... This goes on to less of like PTSD, more of the opposite, which is like they're celebrating life to excess. It's them in Paris, and then eventually they end up in Spain during the bull running, and obviously shenanigans ensues. I haven't read this book, so I can't tell you what kind of shenanigans, but I've heard nothing but good things about this book as well. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm more of a John Steinbeck girly than an Ernest Hemingway girly, but we're gonna try it out. We're gonna figure that out. Last but very not least, the most notorious book, War and Peace by Tolstoy. This is on my radar as well. So this is a story of 5 different families during Napoleon's invasion of Russia. This one is 1,100 pages and has 500 different characters. Apparently this is about just like the disillusionment to war, how these families handle loss and grief, how they handle love affair. Apparently there's lots of love affairs in this book, and just like high aristocracy in Russia during this turbulent time. So it's just like, how can you say that you've read a lot about war when you haven't read War and Peace? Like maybe we should think about that. But that's it. So those are my very specific book recommendations for anti-war novels, if that is a subgenre that you are interested in. It is one for me. I was a political science major in college, so I guess that kind of makes sense. This is kind of like where I reside, what I love. These are the ones I would recommend to other people for sure. Like, I would love to see more people read these books and tell me about them. If you have read these books, make sure you comment down below your perspectives on them. That is going to be it for this video. I've already talked way too long. But make sure to subscribe, like, and comment for future videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.